How's it going, Endless fans? Whiteboard Wednesday one more time, and today we're talking about how AV affects your event layout and vice versa as well. Obviously, with a lot of equipment and things being placed, it seems like AV is always working around what the layout of the room is going to be, where things have to be, making sure that we submit drawings and CAD designs, all that sort of stuff. We might be wondering, well, how do things really affect the layout, and how can I make sure that I'm planning my event properly, and vice versa? How can the AV company as well plan around what you're doing? So I want to put together a rapid fire list of tips and tricks when it comes to layouts and what gets affected when it comes to those certain items. This is by far not an exhaustive list, but just at least a good starting point for you to get thinking. So, you guys ready to jump right on in? All right, let's start off with the first one, which is the most common, is rear versus front projection. You've probably heard this term before when it comes to your events, whether you're projecting in the front of the screens or you're projecting from the rear. That obviously affects layout. So most commonly is that if when you're doing rear projection, you need to make sure you have a certain amount of distance behind it, what we call throw distance, behind it for the space for the projector. Pretty simple, right? But you might not be thinking about when it comes to the front projection. For example, a lot of times we end up being told, hey, you're gonna have to do front projection. We don't have the room behind to do rear projection. So what does that mean? Well, it means that you're gonna have your projector out in the audience. Well, what that also means is if you're not rigging that projector, the projector is actually gonna need a space for it to sit in the audience. Well, what that also means is that you're going to need an unobstructed path between the projector and the screen. So what that means is you might lose a little bit of floor space. If you're planning on putting a table in front of a screen, that might not be possible now, depending again on how much distance is needed for that projector. So it's really important to know that when you're planning your event, whether you're going to do front or rear projection, my best recommendation, always just plan the distance that you need behind for rear projection. There's a really great tool on projectorcentral.com that allows you to plug in the model of projector that the company is using, and it allows you to see how much distance is needed for a certain size of screen. Pretty cool. The other answer is just ask your AV company. How much space do you need behind the screen for you to be able to do rear projection? Pretty simple. However, though, if you're really tight on space, you don't have room for rear projection, or you don't have room to put a table or put the projector down on the ground, you're likely going to have to rig the projector to the ceiling, which then can obviously bring in rigging costs. So just something to keep in mind about how that affects your layout. Next thing to worry about is a kind of a simple one that everyone seems to forget at the last minute, is cabling. And obviously there's a lot of cables having to plug everything in, whether it's power cables or lighting cables or whatever it may be. Well, all those cables have to get somewhere. And if you're running, for example, power cables, if there's an outlet on one side of the room and you need to get power to the other side, you're going to have to run a cable to it. Well, the thing to keep in mind is how is that cabling going to get done? And also, are there any restrictions for that venue as well? For example, I've been in a lot of venues where they'll say you can't have any cables across walkways. It doesn't matter if it's taped down, doesn't matter if it goes in a ramp, a cable ramp. It means no cables at all, unobstructed walkways. Well, what that means is, how are you going to get that cable over the walkway then? Is there a cabling system that allows you to do that, or are we gonna have to build one? Just something always to keep in mind. Also, think about the aesthetics of your event. Do you not want to have cables running around? Well, in that case, you got to really think about what you're going to do. Again, a lot of stuff will rely on what the AV company decides and their plan of attack. However, though, it is very, very common for it to be forgotten. We don't want to forget about that sort of stuff. So when it comes to where you're planning on doing things, think about where the cabling needs to go. For example, in outdoor events where power is also more limited, you might need to run cabling from a lot of different ways. So something to just keep in mind when you're picking where you want things laid out and where you want it. All right, the next thing that usually we have to work on as we're starting to solidify an event is what are called dead cases. And no, we're not talking about cases that we've thrown off the end of the truck and they've broken and now they're dead, but instead a dead case is when it's empty. So obviously all of our stuff shows up in cases all like crazy, and then we have to empty them all, and then obviously the equipment's still set up and everything like that. Well, where are we going to put a lot of these empty cases? So when it comes to your layout, you want to find out where are all these dead cases going. If you have a small event, a lot of it can be tucked in little small corners, behind the screens, backstage, everything like that. But for larger shows, you might need a dedicated room for all the cases that are going to happen. Well, you might be thinking to yourself, well, can't I just have the company come and pick up those cases and take them back to the warehouse? Yeah, sure, that's totally possible. But if you think about it, that truck's not going to sit there during the entire 10 or 5 hour load in. It's got to go make other deliveries. So then the truck has to come back, get the equipment, take it all the way back to the warehouse, and then bring it all the way back during teardown. But then they're not going to stick around, so they're going to leave again, and you're going to have that extra trucking cost. Sometimes you're not going to want that. So always think about, where are these dead cases going to go? Whether it's an extra room, is there enough room backstage? A lot of these questions, again, your AV company is going to figure out in their plan, but this really affects your layout, because if you end up having a lot of dead cases, you might end up being stuck with a very crowded backstage. And that might be something that your talent might not want, or you might not have the room to do it as well. All right. Let's run into a little bit more obvious stuff. I guess I think all this stuff's obvious, so I'm going to stop saying that sort of stuff. But when it comes to your staging and how you want it designed. So this one's, you probably think about, right? Whether it's you're just going to do a traditional stage at the front of the stage, or you want to do a runway, or you want to do it in the round where everyone's surrounding. Well, all this stuff affects the AV. You might be thinking to yourself, yeah, let's just do it in the round. We can use the same sound system we used last year, same video setup, no problem. Well, all of a sudden doing it in the round, you need to put audio all on 360 degrees around and cover every single direction. It might mean you need more speakers. What also you might find is, for example, if you're doing a runway, all of a sudden, you're not just lighting this edge on the main part of the stage, but you have to get this entire part. Well, you can't just light it from the front, because then these people behind you are going to get like dark shadows, and they're not going to be lit well. So you have to light it from both sides simultaneously. Well, what that means is a lot more lighting. Oh, well, we want to make sure it has an even coverage. All these things like that. Same also goes with the round setup. Instead of just having, a couple lights in the front shooting one way, you got to light it in 360 degrees, which then affects your AV and your costs. So something to always keep in mind is that depending on how you want to do your staging, your AV system is going to really get tweaked and moved around as well. I have a lot of advice when it comes to doing things in the round. Maybe we'll save that for a video in the future. All right, next thing we want to talk about, we were talking about lighting just now. Well, obviously lighting shifts based on the stage setup that you have and the layout that you're deciding, but also it depends on whether you're going to do what's called ground supported lighting versus rigged lighting. So this is a humongous topic that we talk a lot about at Endless, is the difference between ground supported and rigged lighting, and rigged sound systems, everything rigging related. But let's say, for example, that you want to do everything ground supported because you want to save on rigging costs, right? You don't want to have all those rigging points. It's just an added cost. We're going to do everything ground supported. Well, if you're trying to do your lighting in a certain way, it might be tough to do that. So for example, if you have a lot of lights that need to light up the stage, it might not be as easy as putting them on the edge of the room. So you might have to put trussing and that ground supported setup in the middle of the room. What that means is you're all of a sudden having these big gigantic stands and truss and everything like that out in the audience. You're gonna have to save a little bit more room when it comes to that stuff. And what you might find is that you don't want to have that, right? You want to make sure that you have a completely unobstructed path. Well, in that case, you might want to opt in for doing some rigging setup. That means you get to hang everything above the ceilings and the floor is completely clear. Well, what that means as well is that when you're doing things ground supported, things are going to be in the way. So again, you can have this kind of trade-off. Sure, you save some money with ground supported, but then you might end up losing the space that you would get if you rigged it. So something to keep in mind when it comes to your layout. All right, next thing has to do with audio, and that has to do with wide rooms versus of a narrow room. So a lot of times, whenever we come in to do an AV setup, usually the client's already decided how they want to have the room laid out. They say, we want to do it wide or we want to do it narrow. Well, this affects the layout in the audio design an extreme amount. So, for example, if you do it in the wide way, so let's say, for example, in this case, we have 3 rows by, what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns wide. But in this case, we have 7 rows deep by 3 columns wide. Well, you might be thinking to yourself, well, it's the same amount of seats. Well, what that means is the audio is going to get covered in 2 different ways. With this wide setup, you might want to put 4 speakers right on the ground facing the covers. And that might be enough so the people in the back, the 3rd row, are able to hear. However, let's say, for example, you're like, well, we don't need 4 speakers to go wide, so we can do only 2, right? Well, no, now the speaker only lasts to about the 3rd row, so these last couple rows are going to have some hard times hearing. So what that means is you're going to have to put speakers halfway through. And we're going to talk about delay screens and delay audio in just a second, but what this means is that the layout of the audio is going to have to be done in a different way. And so what that means is, depending on which way you do it, might affect the AV. You're kind of seeing how it's, every little detail seems to to affect it. So that's always something to keep in mind. What we've also found as well is, for example, if you're doing it wide, you might need to put 2 screens on either side as well, going into video. Whereas the narrow, you might be able to get away with 1 screen versus, because on this end, they can't see this screen right over here, so they need to have a screen closer to them. Or maybe that's too close, so we want them to look a little further away. There's a lot of different changes that can kind of happen. But that's something to really keep in mind, is talk to your AV company about what layout would they recommend for your setup. And don't quite commit to 100% until you've decided about how the AV is going to get affected. All right, so I teased it a little bit, but we talked a little bit about delay screens, and this also goes for delay audio. You might be thinking to yourself, what does this mean, delay video? Like when someone waves their hand 5 seconds later, I see the delay? No. Well, I guess kind of. But the idea of delay is this idea that you might have your main screens. For example, let's say this is your main screen for your setup. Well, if your room is very long and narrow, or long period, and there's a lot of rows of seats. Let's say there's 1,000 people, then there's 1,000 people behind them. Well, those first 1,000 might be able to see this main screen really, really well. But the people in the back are squinting, they go, I can't see it, it's too far away. So you might end up doing is adding another set of screens halfway back through the room. So therefore you have one in the front and then one halfway in the back so that people can see in the back. Pretty simple, right? Well, by having a very long room, you might have to need these delay screens. Well, the same goes with audio. The audio sound system might be designed that it can cover the first 1,000 people in the room, but you might need an additional audio delayed in a delay audio system, just like you need delay screens at halfway back the room, covering that back as well. So it's always something to keep in mind, and this goes for the wide setup as well. So for example, let's say instead of having 7 rows by 3 rows, it's more like 70 rows by 5 rows, and this one is 5 rows wide by 70 deep, right? So what ends up happening is maybe this wide setup, you might not need delay screens because it's close enough for people to see the screens. But on the narrow side, the people in the back are gonna have trouble seeing, so we need to add a delay. So that's always something to keep in mind. Your AV company is always gonna recommend what's best for you, but keep in mind with bigger audiences, you're technically gonna probably need some delay screens and delay audio as well. So, all right. On to the last one, which seems like the super minor detail that gets forgotten until the last minute, is the tech table, also known as the front of house, or FOH. That's where all the technicians are mixing the boards, they're on the computer doing their thing, and usually it's at the back of the room. So therefore, let's say you're the stage, I'm in the back of the room, sometimes in the back corner, sometimes it's in the back center. Sometimes for really big rooms, it might be right in the middle of the room, or maybe it's in the middle room off to the side. There's a lot of different places that it can go. Well, it always seems that it's forgotten, and we don't quite talk to the AV company about what would be best for this. So when it comes to deciding that front of house position, talk to your AV company. They're gonna have a specific place they wanna be. And just keep in mind that yes, your AV company should be flexible with you to hopefully work with you to find the position that not only looks good and isn't blocking what you need, but let's say, for example, if you're doing a big concert setup, you're having a great band come and play, they might not wanna have the front of house position off to the side. The reason why is they wanna get as close as possible to what the audience hears and sees. And the reason why is that they're controlling lights, they're controlling video, they're controlling audio. The more they can hear what the audience hears, the more they can tune it the right way and make it look exactly like they want the audience to look. So, with that being said, talk to your AV company. Where do you want this tech table? A lot of times it's a little small riser, sometimes 12 inches, maybe 24 for a larger event, a series of tables, and then also what they'll usually do is also drape 100% around it. So you always want to factor this into your layout and where you're going to put these things, because last thing you want to do is have to figure out where you're going to put this gigantic deck. And again, this also depends on event to event, because more engineers, maybe the bigger the event, the bigger the tech table area is going to need to be. Maybe they want to do a double decker area. Maybe they want it wider versus narrower, all these things like that. They'll always work with you and they'll always let you know how much they need. But this is a great question to ask when planning your layouts as well. All right. That's everything when it comes to layouts. No, I'm just kidding. Not everything, but these are at least some things to get your mind thinking about when it comes to your layouts and where do things need to go when it comes to your AV. So next time you're planning your layout, think about a couple of these things. Where are things going? How does this relate to AV? And put it in as part of your larger puzzle when it comes to your layout and everything. Your AV company should work with you and give you good feedback, but the idea to know is that everyone wants to work together to make the best possible event. So, with that being said, if you thought this video was awesome, I would love if you gave it a thumbs up right down below. If you thought it was poopy and didn't like it very much, give us the thumbs down, and leave us in a comment. Tell us how we can do better. I'd love to hear from you. What sort of topics do you want to see? Leave that in the comments down below. Maybe it was something related to rigging. Maybe it was something related to round setups. Let us know down in the comments below what sort of topics you want us to cover, and we would be more than happy to cover them in our next Whiteboard Wednesday. So with that being said, I hope you found this video very helpful, and we'll see you next Wednesday on Whiteboard Wednesday. Have a great day.